Joining us from the Walt Disney Imagineering Research and Development Team will be Dawson Dill, Senior Imagineer for R&D, Selena Herman, who's the Technical Program Manager at Walt Disney Imagineering for R&D, and Joe Mohos, the Principal Imagineer at R&D, as well as your moderator, Matthew Panzerino. But before I bring them up, I'm going to throw to a quick video. Enjoy.
When we dream up new ideas for Disneyland, they first take shape and form in preliminary studies. These scale models and the drawings and the blueprint. These are the things that dreams are made of.
Will you marry me? All right. I mean, you know, very rare that sizzle reels get a round of applause. So just speaks to the kind of work that WDI does. You know, we have some great folks with us here from WDI Imagineering, R&D, from Walt Disney. They work on a variety of projects, but we're going to talk about one kind of specific genre of that, which is free-roaming vehicles, or FRVs today. A mild, very mild spoiler warning for Rise of the Resistance, if you haven't been out to see it. There's some imagery in here that may give, you know, just a little sliver of a taste of what's going on there. Just want to flag it as somebody who is, you know, spoiler sensitive myself. Okay, cool. So I think one place to start would be kind of the history of FRV systems in Disney parks. You know, maybe some past experiments and uses of these kinds of free-roaming systems that Disney's had in the parks. Joe?
Sure, and kind of go over a little bit of the evolution. Disney's been using free-ranging vehicles going back 40 years. I imagine half the audience probably wasn't even alive back when we started using this technology. We've got it fielded on at least 9 attractions around the world at our different parks. The first instance was back in 1982 at Epcot at the Universe of Energy. It was kind of a World's Fair showcase about energy, and it was a massive series of stages, and we needed to move about 480 people through every showing. And they decided to use massive free-ranging vehicles as kind of giant people movers to move 80 people in one vehicle times 6 vehicles through every showing. And the system was wire-guided, so it was earlier technology. But it allowed the vehicles to move in a train configuration, then break apart so that each vehicle can look at a different scene, a different projected screen, and then come back together and move through the building. A few years later, at the Great Movie Ride in Hollywood Studios, it used a similar system as kind of a virtual tour bus. That would
Rest in peace, Great Movie Ride, by the way.
Yes, it's going to be replaced with another free-ranging vehicle attraction right behind it.
Yeah.
And so it moved about 60 people per vehicle, and there was a virtual steering wheel in the front, and a tour operator would pretend to drive it, but it was fully automated, and the driver would get off and interact with the scenes and the people, and it was all seamless. And that's the trend here, is that Disney does not showcase the free-ranging technology. It's all hidden away. It's all to tell a story, and it's all masked. And the vehicles themselves are like characters. We want them to have personalities. We want them to be like living organisms and to be your buddy. The next attraction really upped the game for free-ranging vehicles in year 2000 with Pooh's Honey Hunt in Tokyo. They wanted to tell the story of Winnie the Pooh and going through the 100-acre woods in kind of a book format. But they needed a conveyance to get you through that, but also something that would let you interact in a way with the characters. So they had to develop a whole new free-ranging vehicle control system that allowed the vehicles to not just follow a straight line, but also move anywhere in the space, allow them to spin in place, allow to have 8 of them in a particular room at a time, synchronized with wind effects, rain effects, and animatronic figures themselves. So none of that was available off the shelf, so Disney had to code all of that, develop the test procedures, and all the synchronization and communication means to develop that. And that baseline then became a foundation for many of the attractions that came after that. The next one for Tokyo Disney Sea, which is a water-themed park in Tokyo, they said, could we use a free-ranging vehicle as a boat? Could we actually put it in water and drive it around? And that's exactly what they did. There's a puddle of water, a massive pool that all these vehicles drive around in. Guests are in them, and from their perspective, it is a boat that can move and go with the currents of the water, and there's waterfalls and whirlpools that you can get sucked into. And the beauty here is with the system, they could adapt the programming based on the weather. On a hot day, they can start to push the guests in under the waterfalls and let them get soaked, and on a cool day, you can keep you more dry. So there were some challenges there in waterproofing and localizing and charging and communications that you don't have when you're...
Traction.
Yeah. Let's see. The next instance was Mystic Manor in Hong Kong. That was their version of a haunted mansion. But if you've been to any of our haunted mansion attractions, you've been in the Omni-Movers, which are these doom buggies that move you through in a sequential fashion through the attraction. Well, for Mystic Manor, each vehicle was its own FRV and could independently drive through the different rooms and corridors. So your group could split, one go left, one go right, and each one had a unique perspective to that animated special effect going on in each room. So once again, upping the game and creating better experiences for our guests. The next, we hop over to Disneyland Paris, where with the movie Ratatouille that had just come out, they wanted to create an experience where you could be Remy the Rat running around, avoiding humans, helping cook, avoid having things thrown at you. So they had to develop a free-ranging vehicle that had some of the motions that felt more organic, more living, something that could feel fear as you encountered something scary, or shimmy to the left or right, and actually pitch. So there's a motion base placed on the vehicle. And the guests were wearing 3D glasses, and so synchronization with the 3D effects became much more challenging. So we had to develop a control system that was more accurate, more predictable, higher fidelity. And finally, we're at where we are today. In California and Florida, we have this little thing called Star Wars Land that just recently opened up. And our biggest, newest attraction there is Rise of the Resistance. And that uses a free-ranging vehicle system, our most elaborate, our most sophisticated system that we've built to date. And in it, the guests go through a whole experience of being captured, put in jail. Resistance comes to help you. And there's a droid sitting on the front of the ship that has got personality and is desperately trying to help you escape. So once again, the vehicles have more and more personality, they have more and more character, and the elements of this ride are a combination of Tower of Terror and Star Tours and Soaring and all these other ride systems brought together into one experience. And I think we got some footage of that.
Yeah, I think we have a little footage of Rise to show kind of those vehicles in action that we can put up there. And Rise is really, it's a culmination of obviously a bunch of development and testing, like all rides are, but in this particular experience, you have a lot of overlapping systems. You have humans obviously being carried through the space, and we can see here that you have multiple ride vehicles all in place. Dawson, I'd love to talk a little bit about the use of FRV in testing rides. So not actually in practice even yet, just the testing phase.
Sure, and actually I think this is a perfect transition because Rise of the Resistance was actually one of the first attractions that we've ever done with this pipeline we're about to talk about that is incorporating literal, physical, free-roaming vehicles as well as virtual reality to get our designers into the process faster.
And previously, I know that VR had been used in like static configurations, just to pre-viz rides and that sort of thing, right? But not on a moving platform.
So when I actually started, we used to build, and we still do, these physical models. You would sit on a stool, and you would sort of like scoot your way through to make sure you get a sense of what the visuals are going to look like.
Sure.
And one of my first jobs as an intern was to take a camera through actually the Ratatouille attraction and understand what this was going to look like, so they had a video to look at and understand this process. But then what ended up happening is at R&D, our job is often guided by a little bit of what's coming out in technology, what's emerging in robotics, what's emerging in AI. It comes out of a little bit of what do we think is just neat. And we ended up with this free-ranging vehicle platform that we just use for experimentation. Now, it's not uncommon for us to test a lot of these systems. In fact, I think we have a picture of what a normal sort of test vehicle looks like. You can see a team. It's got all of the stuff on there. It's built out of plywood. It's very, built. Yeah, thank you. It's built to get really close to what we think this specific ride is going to look like.
So this may be a ride-specific platform.
Yeah, and they start like this, and we do this all the time, right? Mock-ups are part of the fun of Imagineering.
Right.
So at R&D, we started taking one of these platforms and just adding things to it. So this one's got a motion base. We've got a Apple box holding up that computer monitor. We've got...
no, that's an official Apple box,
this
official
is
Disney Apple box.
It's not sponsored.
Right.
But when we started playing with this, what we were looking at is what's interesting in the space of free-ranging vehicles. This is everything from the mechanical system to the onboard control system to the wayside control system to sensor systems to what does this thing even do? How does it drive? And one thing we were honestly just playing with, there's a person I work with every day named Michael Ilardi who was playing with virtual reality. He had got it working on the vehicle. He had actually linked it up to a game engine. And this was, 3 or 4 years ago. And there was this other team working on this Star Wars ride. And they're like, well, we have everything in a game engine already to pre-visualize it. We can ride through it because, like you said, we want to sit at our desk and understand the sight lines.
Right.
And he said, well, what if I just take your animation and I put the VR right on board and we'll just run it like that. We'll run both of these things concurrently and get the motion one-to-one. Because I think there is sort of, we use and love simulators, but there's just something about one-to-one, exactly the motions, the human body is one of the greatest sensors ever created. And when you're talking about rides, you can think about them as sort of just in it for the thrill. But as when Joe's saying you're kind of designing characters, you want this thing to feel good at just every moment, right? This has to feel not just like you're going forward, and it can't just feel comfortable, it can't just feel safe, it also has to feel like that character is driving me forward.
Right.
And the only way to really confirm that is to put it all together. And so what we've ended up with now, this is a look at our current system. We have 2 vehicles. We have one 8-person vehicle, one 5-person vehicle, still has the motion base on board. And we use these things constantly to just experiment with the greatest metric, I think, on Earth, which is what's fun. Because there's no simulation that can tell you in a single plane, from a bird's eye view, I can tell this is fun, or from a concept painting, I can tell this is fun. You need those things
Everyone
to
knows
get to this point.
isometric fun is the most.
It's my personal favorite. Yeah. But I do think that there's just, we have this thing of like, there's just people that just knows like that was it. That was the corner that felt right. And by putting it all on board where you have, in that case, you can have 13 people at once experiencing, sort of a moment from an attraction, you're closing the loop. And I think that, it's not just for Imagineering, as I'm sure anyone here who has built anything ever, the time when you really understand it is when things start to come together. It's when that one system has to talk to that other system, has to talk to the person on board understanding the show or the story or the experience. And so for us, what this has allowed us to do is we have a custom vehicle system talking to VR, talking to a game engine that just lets us understand and come together really quickly.
Right.
And,
And I think we have a video of that
this is
the vehicle in action, so we can play that. And so how long did it take to develop this platform, roughly?
I think that's a tough question because in truth, this is us actually. This is literally footage. Again, I don't know the year offhand. Pre-motion base, actually doing Rise of the Resistance testing. This is, you can see me and Michael on board there playing with the motion base. This is it with our delightful show lighting because we cannot be helped.
Well, of course,
in the entertainment industry. It'll make anything look purple lighting. Like thing looks really good.
Right. Maybe add some orange and you get the Michael Bay. Yeah.
But when it comes to length, I think really everything that we do at R&D is really more about iteration as opposed to length. Because what happened was, we had this system that was, let's explore this aspect of a free-ranging vehicle. We have this system that was, well, I have this mechanical test I want to do. We have this one guy that's like, well, I kind of want to play with VR. And then suddenly, we create something of value, and now, I don't know how many, but tens of rides are using that system in order to understand exactly, what their thing's going to feel like in the future. I mean, as far out as we've had rides that have come in 2 weeks into ideation, right? All they've got is the most basic 3D model someone put together on a laptop. In a matter of hours, you can be riding it. You can actually see what it feels like and looks like, and you get the wind in your face because it's just actual air moving around you.
Right.
We don't have to simulate that.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I mean, I think one of the other interesting questions about this is, kind of what do you view as the distinct advantages to this kind of hybrid system that you have versus designing it, kind of the traditional way? Let's put it that way.
I think the biggest advantage is, honestly, it's that you get everyone to have the same conversation. I think I said this a little bit before, but it's something that I do believe bears repeating, is that, as Selena knows, she is in the middle right now of figuring out how vehicle systems are going to work, and you're getting feature sets, and people have creative needs, and this, even in just this room, which is a small subset of Berkeley, small subset of California, small subset of the world, if I started talking about a Star Wars ride, every single person is going to have a different idea of it in their head. Some people are going to picture it. Some people might have a monologue describing it. Some people might think of something that's very bright or very dark, and unless I've literally described it, it's going to be up to interpretation.
Yeah.
This is about removing interpretation to close the loop on design, because great design is about conversation and collaboration. And I think that for us, what this says is 5 people, an engineer, an artist, a producer, a designer, and someone that's designing scents can step onto this vehicle.
A synesthete for color.
Sure. They can go on, explore a scene. They can get off and say, that one turn, 3 seconds in, it felt a little jarring to me. Did you feel that? And they'll be all in that same conversation with the same idea, no longer, discussing something that's so abstract and theoretical.
Right. Cool. Selena, can you talk a little bit about designing an experience like Rise around modern FRV systems?
Yeah, I think my background prior to Disney was in aerospace and in commercial trucking. So coming from a very utilitarian background into a creative industry, there are 2, I think, main things that has really struck me in the design and creative process at Disney. One is about how Joe and Dawson have said, and it sounds like we're trying to harp on the same thing, but really is that everything we do is creating a story and an experience. And that changes so much of the design process. It is not about taking a vehicle and how to get it efficiently from point A to B. It's taking you from point A back to point A, but during this loop, you are experiencing what it feels like to be a mouse. Like, what does that specific motion look like and feel like? And our control system has to be tweaked for the more difficult metrics, such as fun and what that does to the entire design process is that there's a lot of conversations needed among all the disciplines to really bring that together. And while all of that is happening, there is also a very robust engineering process that needs to happen. My team,
because you have to productize this platform.
Exactly. My team's goal is to productize what R&D has put together, taking these technology platforms, looking at them, and in order for something to be in our parks, they have to be working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and anywhere from 20 or 40 years in the Great Movie Ride.
Right.
And there are
how do your robot uptimes compare? I'm just curious.
Yeah, and I'm sure people here understand, getting something working just on a consistent basis is one thing, but to have such high demand in our parks and with so much volume that we really have to understand the components of our technology and our system to do such a thing.
And this, the Rise situation specifically required that the FRVs interacted with multiple ride systems, right? So it wasn't just, hey, FRVs are the centerpiece, and it's going to be from beginning to end, single ride system. We can figure this out. You have a drop ride, a simulator, the FRV, and of course, multiple effects that have to be timed perfectly, et cetera, right?
Yes. And all of that has to have just impeccable timing. You know, telling a story is not just a bunch of things happening. It has to happen like a punchline. It has to be on the dot, and it has a series that has to go through every single time over this whole entire experience. And how all the systems coordinate together and create that experience is really unique to this industry.
And these vehicles are not on a predetermined track, right? And not only are they free roaming, they are interacting with one another to be aware of where they are, and then the environment, and then of course the environmental timing for effects to be the most impactful for the rider, right?
Exactly, exactly. And the vehicle really is just one part of the tool. It is not about sitting in a vehicle that people are there to go to Disneyland. They're going there to be part of Star Wars Land, to be part of, be a rat that runs around and try to escape in the kitchen. And that's I think the underplayed part about Disney Imagineering is that all that technology, there's so much of that in your parks, but that's never the first thing that we want people to see. We want people to go in and really have that make-believe and suspend your disbelief moment of stepping into another world.
Can you talk a little bit about the challenges to overcome in implementing FRV and kind of like polishing the technology and getting that to work right? Maybe some challenges that you had?
Well, I have to say, first of all, my expertise is not in the how Rise of Resistance specifically were put together, but understanding we have a lot of similar challenges as the automotive or industrial robotics industry in terms of the machinery has to understand where they are, what's the movement, the control loops that goes into it, and we just have a very specific bend on our requirements, how it is not something that's easily put into a tech spec and be able to just publish out.
Right.
And if I can add on, I think there's also this aspect, because you said this, and I think it's funny, but you start at point A and you end at point A on most Disney attractions. So the most efficiently engineered attraction is one that goes nowhere. Anything beyond that is just extra. It's just for fun.
Right.
And then if you think about it, all of what we're designing is that. And so you have the control loops, the necessities of things that you would find in something like maybe automation or the automotive industry, but you now have to solve the problem in a way that's fun. You can't just say, well, what if we just did this, and it still gets you to the same place, and the G's seem similar, but it's like, yeah, but it doesn't feel like I'm on a spaceship. And then it's not acceptable. And I think that for us is actually a challenge, but the best part about the work is that it's not just, it is engineering, but it is art through engineering.
And then that brings up a question about like the process, the WDI process, because I think this is under-examined, just the way that WDI goes about solving problems. So Joe, could you talk a little bit about like how problems are solved at WDI versus, say, your previous job, for instance?
Quite a few differences, but the big one is when I came from automotive, aerospace, and military, we always started projects with, let's capture our requirements, our scope, nail it down. We're going to build X number of these. They need to do this, this, and this by this amount of time. Where the process in a creative environment is very different. It's more the creative lead comes up with ideas and says, can we make boats appear to do this? Can I make this thing feel like a living creature? And they build a team with various engineering disciplines within the company, and we create these integrated teams, and we keep working the problem. No, I can't make you fly, but I can make you feel like you're kind of falling, and I can make the wind blow in your ear. No, I want to push it more. I want to feel like I'm weightless. Okay, well, we can put you in this kind of a rig, and there's that iterative background, that process that goes on. Between the community, and we've got these wonderful groups within WDI that specialize in visual effects and audio effects and anything with pyrotechnics and ride and motion simulators. And the one thing that I think is absolutely wonderful at WDI is how they all come together on projects. People will fluidly come in and out as their expertise is needed, and there's a rich review process where we have people that have been doing this for 50 something years that'll come in and go, well, have you guys thought about this? And the whole team will go, whoa, we haven't even thought about that. And I mean, that's one of our charters in R&D, is to experiment and try things out and see what sticks, when we throw it at the wall. And sometimes we're surprised that we start out with a project that tries to do A and B and we end up with Z.
Right.
And it becomes a tool that we're going to use now for ongoing. So it's just a wonderful collection of the chemistry between the different groups, between creative and hard engineering and program management, that really makes the Disney projects, succeed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've been fortunate to visit a few times WDI offices, and I'm struck by how many things are sitting around that they're like, you know what, we made this, we're not really sure what we're going to do with it, but eventually we'll get around to using it. I know it.
There's a lot of stuff in closets that when I first joined Disney, I was like, oh my gosh, why haven't you fielded this? Well, X, Y, and Z, we can,
Right.
They're waiting for the next technology to be ruggedized.
Sometimes the
go.
technology just isn't there yet, and that's what we're really excited about in R&D, is looking at neighboring domains of self-driving cars and new sensors and 5G wireless and all these other, and AI and GPUs. You put them together in different ways, and you're going to get a capability that we haven't even dreamed of 5 years ago, and go, wow, that's going to be the future of experiences, or movies, or special effects, or something else.
Right. Yeah. Cool. Speaking of future experiences, or just experiments, I should say, you have something called Circuit Breaker. You want to show the video?
Yeah, so I asked to bring this and show this clip. I'll set it up really quickly just to say, to Joe's point, this is not an experience that is coming to a Disney park near you.
This is the disclaimer portion of the conversation.
Disclaimer portion. That allows me to show it. But essentially what you're seeing here, these are two concept vehicles. So they're actually custom mechanically designed holonomic vehicles with 4 people driving together using a now patented collaboration interaction system, of course. And of course, what we did with it is we got it tech into a game system, so why don't we just play a game? Right. So this was actually playing essentially a hybrid of Pong and air hockey, but using 2 of our free-ranging vehicles just to see what happens.
Right.
And I think we do this a lot, and it's sort of part of our charter, like Joe said, is we have to look at technology as an evolution of a feature set. So in that video, there's an evolution of the mechanical side of the vehicle. We have, sensors and control systems that we were exploring. We have a variety of, projection techniques that we just happened to be playing with at the time. We had the game engine, but you need something to bring it together. Because the truth of the matter is you can take the same components, put them together one way, and it's not very fun. And so for us, that was a really, honestly, very fun couple of weeks at work when we had that up and running. It's a little bit more competitive when we're not filming it.
Right.
It's trying to be very good.
Right.
But for us, we don't know what's going to come out of that. And I think that's what makes us excited to be here and engage with a conference like this, because for us, it's not just about what's next in robotics, what's next in AI, what's next in video games, what's next in vehicles, the automotive. It's, okay, so these are new colors that we get to paint with. I've always wanted to paint something that has that color. Let's see what happens when this new feature comes online. Or you know what? We have this thing in the closet, but it always suffered from the fact that it didn't quite have this, and you might have solved that, so we get to bring that thing back out. And so by constantly iterating, putting these things together, it seems like a lot of fun. You get to build a big Pong experience, which is neat. But it's really just about being ready for that lightning in a bottle moment, because that's where you get these stunning stories and experiences, is everything coming together at once. The technical system, the creative moment, the great story we want to tell, and an opportunity to put it somewhere that everyone can take part in it, and we don't just have to bring videos.
Great. I don't want to put you on the spot, but just as a last question, if you had to leave WI tomorrow, you're like, okay, my time is up, I got to go, or you found a new opportunity. What aspect of working there would you take away from you as part of the process? Or what aspect of that would you export to a company that you would go to work for or build?
I would export that I think anything can be art. I think that there's often this idea that is said about Imagineering, that it's art and engineering. But the truth is, I don't think it's art and engineering. I think it is the same thing. And that the act of creating anything becomes an experience or a story or a character or a piece of art by the motivation of the person. So if this hypothetical situation happens and I wake up working for someone here, I would imagine that the thing is that no matter what the ask is, there's a way to do it that the end result can just be something cool. And I think that if I'm working in auto, it's the difference between self-driving cars and the journey that we would go on. It's the difference between a robotic interaction and a conversational experience. And I think that's the thing that Imagineering that is, I don't know, I will take
answer.
forever. Yeah.
Selena?
I think it would have to be that the fun can be such a core part of the business, like being in from defense and in commercial trucking. The fun is kind of like low on the list. It's very, let's make this work, we gotta do this, like very straightforward, very pragmatic.
Right.
But sometimes the element of, oh, but we can do this way, and it just delights people in a way that in a little bit unexpected. I think it's a great way to, because everyone is creative and everyone loves that and gives such more emotional attachment to your project and to the product you're making. And I think I would love to be able to take that with me.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Joe?
I think in my case, having worked now with Disney folks, if I could go back 20 years, I would be hiring some of those folks to help me design better user experiences specifically. Engineers like myself are the worst people to design user interfaces. Boxes with numbers, up, down. Having seen how somebody could come in from our creative team and look at it and go, oh no, arrange it this way. It's more intuitive to a human. Wow, I could have made better products back then. So
Great. Well, there you have it from the horse's mouth. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you.